Doc Slab Audio on music production and audio engineering. Welcome to Doc Slab Audio and our Insights series. This is the second video in our series, and in this video we want to talk about a subject that I think is highly underrated and something a lot of people really do not take into consideration to come out with the productions that they want. And that is the art of simplicity for a powerful production. So I'm going to make this really simple, because whether or not you're dealing with this when you're engineering or you're dealing with this when you're composing, that the idea here is that the power sometimes is in the simplicity because of the inherent nature of most music productions nowadays. So that can be a little different when you're dealing with movie scores, something like jazz productions or symphonic things, but most genres, that the power in simplicity for a powerful production is monumental, and for a couple of different reasons. Trying to keep things, arranged, composed, layered, working against each other in the stereo field, and things being nice and clear and arranged well to maintain clarity and power is huge. And when you get into engineering, the same thing can happen, and not over editing and over processing and over mixing things to death to not kill the production and end up with something you don't want. So a really good example here is that whether you're composing or whether or not you're engineering, that the power and the simplicity is monumental, because you want something that's done really well, that you can embellish upon. So the concept here is like, let's say you have this thing going on, and for a moment in time or a small movement or a transition that you want to do something really cool and complex and wild. And there's a lot of stuff on my channel about that, but it's not trying to use it all the time a lot of times. And that's something you really need to get in your head, because the concept here is you've got this production that, let's say you've got this verse or something, and you really focused your composition of it, and you really focused on your performance of it, and you really focused on this production standing on its own and doing light engineering to it and mixing it real well, but not killing it in any one of those areas, so that it's a powerful production that can stand on its own, and you're just trying to enhance it so that it's this really cool production that just grabs you. Oh yeah, bro. And that is so cool. And you didn't kill it in any of those areas by overproducing it. That way that you've got this really cool, fairly fluorescent production happening, that you've really focused on the power of the simplicity. So whenever you're in the composition phase, performance phase, or engineering area, do something really cool that's just like this really cool tapestry of really complex things happening in any one of those areas that catch the listeners like, wow, dude, for that little transition or that moment, it was like, what was that? That is so cool. And it just catches them. Bam, you do this really cool, complex thing of this really complex tapestry of some things happening, and then back into focusing on that simplicity is where the power is monumental. The impact is much greater, so that you're really focusing on that simplicity and the power of that having the impact that it does, and trying to attain that simplicity and that power in that, to where whenever you do something really complex with your composition, your performances, or your engineering, that it is something that has the effect you want. That it's not this just ongoing droning complexity chemistry that it's like, wow, bro, for that one moment, or that transition, the engineer did some wild stuff with his EQ or his reverberation or his some effect or his automation or anything, or the composer, added this thing or did things, some wild back and forth thing and center right, or the performer did something really cool for a moment, then it's much more readily accepted as a really cool thing that is more complex and more seen as this complex moment throughout this production that gives it more power, that gives it more, how do you say, more, spice. It's like this thing, wow, that is so cool. It's just, going along through the verse and the chorus or whatever, or this moving, this transition, and then all of a sudden that moment just stands out. And then right back into focusing on the power of the production and the simplicity of having that production stand on its own and letting it be on its own and not trying to kill it in any of those areas, to where, that power isn't getting sucked away by too much going on or too much engineering going on or any of those things. That it might sound kind of backwards, but you kind of find that in a lot of stuff like dance, EDM, country, rock, blues, a majority of the productions that are mainstream, that there's power there. And most of the power is getting a good production, getting good performances, getting really good captures, and trying to enhance it to make it bigger than life so it has that power. And then adding things here and there that just, give it a little catch or a little twist or a little wow, that, is a little different or unique for that one moment, a little transition or that one moment in time that catch the listener and show the composers or the performers or the engineers' skills of doing something cool that is much more likely to have a powerful effect as something complex, of a complex, cool tapestry, rather than just some crap that happened in the middle of a so-so song that you didn't really focus on the foundations of it and, really honing that in your engineering, your production, and your performances, in composition, that it has that power. And it's much better to have one song that's that way than 20 songs that are like, yeah, well, I turn it on and then, it's like background stupid elevator music that I don't really pay attention to. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like there's a place for that stuff. There is. And the flip side of that is, songs that, whether it's country or grunge or whatever, that not to try to kill it in any of those areas, that it's simple, it's raw, it's dirty, and you start messing with it too much, the guy comes in and goes, well, you're trying to turn my country, grunge, blues song into this hyper clean, thing from Star Trek. I feel like a lunatic in Star Trek, bro. What the hell did you do to my production? It's like, does that make sense? And it's like, and I know that sounds funny, but it can be true sometimes. So you really got to step away in those situations also. But a lot of times, a lot of those things that it's pretty clean, it's pretty well done, but you're not killing it with overproducing it, overcomposing it, and over engineering it to where you sucked all the life out of it, to where you're not letting that, really focusing on trying to. And if you're in any one of those areas, really trying to help the production attain that, to where, whether it's in the composition or it's in the performances or it's in the engineering, that it's really, we just had a huge bolt of lightning happening, so you have to go. Anyway, so we're in the middle of a thunderstorm as we work into laboratory. Anyway, I hope that helps, because as you look at my channel and you really look through that really get back to that, because the biggest thing is if you really focus on that throughout the production, that you're going to have some really good, simple foundations that when you embellish upon them, that they're really cool foundations that have power to begin with. And when you embellish upon them and do a really good job of it, they're much more likely to have that wow effect about some really cool tapestry thing happening every now and then that makes you a really good composer, performer, and engineer in the eyes of the people that are listening to your productions, because your productions have that power. And the foundations are in the simplicity and the building blocks for when you do something really cool and complex in a tapestry form of in any one of those areas. So I certainly hope that helps, and I certainly hope that you focus on that as a producer and engineer to help you get those powerful productions you want, and take that into consideration whenever you're working through a production. So peace, self-love. I certainly hope you enjoyed this second video in our new series, and I will see you in the next video.